With more than 30 billion video views, he reaches millions weekly, and he's here now to open a discourse across the aisle, if the aisle still exists. Cenk Uygur joins us in studio next. I'm James Poulos. This is Zero Hour. Cenk Uygur founded and hosts the largest online news show in the entire world. You know them as the Young Turks. He co-founded the Justice Democrats and is the best-selling author of Justice is Coming. Welcome, Cenk.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. When is Justice going to be here?
2028, I hope.
2028. Okay. All right. Let's get into this. Lots of people, sort of scratching their heads for one reason or the other. This is definitely a strange moment. It's gonna continue to be strange for a while, I think. I'm really interested in the way that the categories of right and left have kind of been scrambled and morphed. I know you've been tracking this stuff for a very long time, so let's get into it. Trivia for those playing along at home. I was a guest on Young Turks quite a few times back in the day when I was living in LA and you guys were doing the thing. I fondly remember that Glenn Greenwald gave me the thumbs up, so that was good enough for your bookers. And now here we are today. Back then, you guys, you and Glenn and that whole kind of the LA left, Oliver Stone had folks hanging out all the time. It was definitely a scene. And there was a lot of attacking Obama from the left, attacking Obama for the wars, for droning American citizens, all that kind of stuff. That now, for a minute, it looked like that was going to be ancient history. But now, like, that faction of the left seems like, maybe you guys have a reason to pat yourselves on the back a little bit. Maybe, the Obama legacy has proven to be more pain and suffering than certainly what he was selling. Do you feel vindicated by what's happened with Trump and kind of where the left finds itself today?
So if you're in the reality-based world, yeah, then I feel vindicated. But remember, everybody looks at everything from a different perspective, right? So there's tons of people now that are either on the left or the right that would look at it and go, oh my God, Cenk was totally wrong. If he had just backed Joe Biden more, Biden would have won. Like there's a whole group of people that really believe that.
Right. It's actually all your fault.
Yeah. Oh, that happens all the time. Yeah. And it's always both sides and it doesn't really matter. Like, so they'll say like, oh, you're not important. You're not relevant. And then they'll say, you swung the election. Well, wait, which one is it? Right. And so if you just hadn't spoken out against the things that Obama was doing wrong or Biden was doing wrong or Kamala Harris was doing wrong, we would have won. And that assumption is, and they don't realize it, it's an implicit assumption planted in their head by mainstream media. News is not news. News is propaganda. So if you have your side not backing your guy 100%, then he's not on your side. He's not doing news. In reality, no, that is news. News is you give credit and discredit wherever it's due, and especially to politicians. But news has not been news for so long. People have forgotten. They're like demanding propaganda. Yeah. And they're like, why won't you say that Obama is a saint and benighted? And I'm like, but we're on the left. We don't want him drilling in the Gulf. Yeah. He just said he's going to drill in the Gulf. On what planet should I not criticize that? Are we supposed to morph our policies around these politicians and their donors? No, no deal. So look, if you look at objective reality, Obama was way more right-wing, and now finally people are beginning to say that and say, oh yeah, my nickname for him was the establishment, and that used to drive people crazy on the left, and we lost a good amount of members, subscribers, et cetera, when I did that. But now people look back and go, oh, my God, you're right. He was the establishment. Yeah. He did listen to his donors.
The guy who never left Washington was the establishment. Imagine.
Yeah. Oh, and then Joe Biden. See, that's what I'm talking about. And I get it. The left wing has a certain perspective, and that gets put into a lot of their broadcasts, et cetera. do we do it sometimes? Of course, we're all human, right? And we come at it from a certain perspective. The right-wing media certainly has a very strong perspective, and that colors how they view things. It's not like, oh, left-wing's biased, but right-wing's a bunch of saints and they got it exactly right. Not even close, in my opinion. We could have that conversation. But most of all, mainstream media is the ones that claim to be objective. And I think they're the least objective, the least truthful, not because their facts are wrong, but because their framing is so absurd that politicians aren't crooks. They're crooks. That donor money doesn't affect politicians. You've got to be mental to think it doesn't affect politicians. So the Democratic Party, unfortunately, has gone so pro-corporate. We've been trying to pull them back from the left, and they wouldn't listen. And one of the things that we were saying, James, is if you don't listen, you're going to lose the American people. They don't like corporate donors. They don't like corporate media. And they're like, oh, you're crazy. Everybody loves them. What are you talking about?
Right.
Oh, yeah. And only the right wing takes the money. I'm like, really? Because I can swear that I saw that Nancy Pelosi took $1 billion in donations. So this idea has always been absurd. If we had gone in the populist direction of Bernie Sanders, we would have won. But they can't get it through their thick head. They're like, no, we have a new and improved corporate robot.
Yeah. Well, at a certain point, they became captive to that establishment, and it's really hard to pivot on a dime, right? I mean, maybe if it's a complete emergency in the making, but they thought they had Trump nailed down. They thought they had him in a box. They threw the kitchen sink at him, and it didn't work.
Yeah. So in 2016 on ABC's This Week, right after the DNC, Hillary Clinton's got a 10-point lead. She's at her height. They ask us to predict who's going to win the election. I'm the only one on the panel that says Trump. Everybody laughs out loud, right? And so they said, why? You hate him more than any of us on this panel. Why do you think Trump's going to win if you don't like him so much? Because I'm not in the do I like him or not business when I'm doing analysis of the news. I'm in, hey, what's objective reality and what's going to happen? And I explained at the time, and everybody can see the clips for themselves online, right? So Trump is in my opinion, a fake populist, but he's at least doing populism at a time when the country's in a populist mood and they don't like the establishment. And everybody else on the panel, of course, is establishment. So they're like, this crazy guy thinks the country doesn't like the establishment.
Right.
No, they're so blinded by their own bubble. James, that's the most important thing. Everybody's in their bubble. And in their bubble, they're 100% right, and everybody they know says they're 100% right, and they don't need to talk to anyone else, and there's no way that they're wrong. Well, what happened in 2024? 2016 was the beginning of it, but 2024, to me, was the most watershed moment for so many reasons, because the establishment finally realized the country hates them.
Well, the bubble offers security. It offers predictability. It offers, people have your back. A lot of reasons to retreat into the bubble. And what we saw in 2024 was actually, no, your bubble is not going to save you.
Yeah, 100%. But look, it's happening now on the right.
That's right.
So you go on X and they think Elon Musk has a 200% approval rating, right? Because everybody on X is like, Elon, right? And then you look, and I said just a couple of days ago, I'm like, guys, his numbers are going to fall off a cliff. Why? Because 77 million people that voted for Donald Trump aren't all hardcore MAGA. And they're not all tech bros. They're not all on X, etc. They're real Americans that are living their lives, didn't like inflation, didn't like the situation with immigration and crime, etc. Right? So poll comes out literally the next day. Boom, fell off a cliff. He's at he was at 26% strongly favorable. He used to be at 47%. That's for Republicans. For the country, 13%. Just strongly favorable, to be fair.
Yeah.
If you include somewhat favorable, I think he got up to 28%. But these are really bad numbers.
Well, these are patterns of politics. This is human nature. You love the guy before you vote for him. He gets into office, reality sets in, and those numbers, they come down. They always come down.
So to that point, in the right-wing bubble right now, Trump, MAGA, et cetera, is ascendant. And they think we could do whatever we want. We got a mandate, et cetera. The Republicans won the popular vote for the first time in 20 years. And Trump won it by what, 1.5 points or 2 points in that ballpark, which is a huge sea change, right? At the same time, guys, winning by 2% for the first time in 20 years is not a mandate.
It's just very easy to get high in your own supply. Everyone's susceptible to it, and it's easy to see how and why people get political power and they overextend themselves.
Exactly, and look, I said it as a warning to the left. Hey, watch out! We're running into an iceberg here in 18 different ways. One, stop being pro-establishment. Stop listening to mainstream media. But also with Biden, I was like, there's a 0% chance this brother's going to win. I said it a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
I said, look, anyone who follows politics knows if you're an incumbent in the 40s, your chance of winning is very, very low. Joe Biden is in the 30s. He's in the mid-30s. Sometimes he drops into the low 30s. That is a 0% chance of winning. Zero, right? Plus, he can't talk. You need a candidate who can speak. And what's amazing about how thick the bubbles are is most of the Democratic voters, because they were watching Morning Joe and The View, and now these new online shows that are, I got my issues with the far left. That's a different topic. Mm-hmm. But the ones I'm talking about in this case are like super pro-establishment. Mm-hmm. They were telling their audience, no, Joe Biden's young.
Right.
Like behind the scenes, he's young
Vigorous.
and dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's amazing about that is not the level of the lie. As the guy's going, oh, we defeated Medicare. And they're like, no. Behind the scenes, he's like, woohoo, let's go.
Opposite, right.
Like, no one could possibly believe that except tens of millions of people believe that. They really believe that Joe Biden was the only one who could beat Trump and he was a great candidate, et cetera. Now on the right, we've got folks thinking, oh, okay, since we're ascendant, we don't need to worry about figuring out where the middle of the country is, where you win elections. We're just going to go all the way to the right, okay? And we're going to, like, Trump appoints this beady guy in public diplomacy in the Middle East. And it turns out he's been saying crazy white nationalist stuff. Why? Why do you want to lose the country? But people can't get out of their bubble. And they think, oh, that's no big deal. That's no big deal. So what? He's a white nationalist. So what? Right? You guys are always calling everyone fascist. And that's true, too. We call people fascists way too much.
Yeah, I think that's when the bubble popped, is when it was Hitler, and then Trump's elected, and it's like, well, we're going to have lunch with them, and, just try. Suddenly, so you're cool to have, tea and crumpets with Hitler now. And, I mean, it was just an embarrassment, and that's the risk of making that kind of rhetoric.
Yeah. So look, Trump has it coming because he shouldn't have done what he did in 2020. He lost the election. He should have just handed over power peacefully, but he can't let it go. To this day, he can't let it go. He's still got an enemies list. He's going to drive himself into being unpopular again because it's his insecurity. It's so obvious it's his insecurity. Okay, so I know a lot of people disagree on the right, and they'll be super mad at me for saying it. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying, guys. In your bubble, Trump won that election. But for the overwhelming majority of the country, they think your guys are in la-la land. He did not win the vote at all. At all. So one of the ways you could tell is, so this time he won and everybody said he won and there was no ands, ifs or buts and he won every swing state. Nobody contested a damn thing. They're like, oh yeah, okay, he won. So when he wins, it's super easy to acknowledge. Now we got blue and on though. People are driving me nuts. They're like, no, Kamala actually won.
Right. And the cycle begins again.
And here we go again.
It's so easy to manipulate people, and I think that's why January 6th stuck in so many people's minds this time around when they thought, you can't just, I think they had like 500 FBI agents on the ground for J6. It was like some ridiculous slice of all available agents. Smothered with operatives and throwing people in jail, people committing suicide in prison, just disgraceful, extremely anti-American, and the totally blown out of all proportion to what was going on the ground that day with people who are just there to have a rally. I think that more than the actual sort of debate over whether or not he actually won and by how much and how much of it was fraud and how much of it wasn't. It was really just what happened to people who turned out to support Trump on that day peacefully that I think led to the result that we're seeing now. You're
talking about 2020 January 6th?
That's
the
right.
January 6th? Yeah, no, I'm not sure I agree with that. So here's my take on it. A whole bunch of people came out to support Trump.
Yeah.
And most of them did not go to the Capitol. Okay. So first of all, people don't talk about that. Mm-hmm. So the folks who went to go see him speak and didn't go to the Capitol, they didn't do anything wrong. They just went to go see a president speak. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Right. Then for the January 6th guys that actually went into the building, look, we on the left say riots are the voice of the unheard. That's a quote from Martin Luther King.
Right.
And what I try to explain to the left, now I'm going to be both generous and very ungenerous to those folks.
Yeah.
The generous side is, I get it. A lot of MAGA didn't feel served by the establishment at all. And they hate him, and I get why they hate him. I hate him from the left for a similar reason, right? Mm-hmm. And so the voice of that average Trump voter, et cetera, was not heard in the media, was not heard in halls of power. And so that riot was a little bit of the voice of the unheard, okay? And so I get it. On the other hand, no, you broke into the building, you chanted, and I know not everybody chanted this, but a lot of people chanted, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. That's a disaster. In the United States of America, talking about murdering the vice president, then now I'm going to really piss off the right. Then we have witnesses who say Trump was told they're talking about murdering your vice president, and he says he deserved it. I'm never going to vote for that guy. Never. Okay, so he had it coming in terms of like, don't tell me he's pure and innocent. On the other hand, it doesn't mean that all of his voters think that. Like on the left, they think, oh, everybody on the right knows that it was a coup attempt, knew that Trump was trying to steal the election, and they were trying to steal it for him because they're all fascists. No. They don't think they're fascists. They don't think they were trying to steal the election. They thought they were trying to prevent the theft of an election.
Well, and that's the power of propaganda, and it wasn't just propaganda coming out of the mainstream media. You know, this is deep state orchestrated stuff. You know, you've been tracking this stuff as long as guys on the right have, and one of the things that's scrambled those categories of right and left is what's your attitude toward the deep state, toward the intelligence community. So much of that has bubbled up to the surface since the Obama years that the Trump 2.0 coalition that you got, you know, is coming from whether it's Maha people, Kennedy people who have been on the left and have been stalwart against, you know, big ag, big pharma, deep state. That is, I think, why we got into a situation where Trump was able to win to a degree that there wasn't any sort of controversy over his win because of those people.
Yeah. So look, the right and the left are probably going to have a little bit different definitions of deep state, establishment, et cetera. But what I look, we can't help but talk about the things we disagree on, right? Mm-hmm. And we've got to stop catching feelings every time we talk about things we disagree on. Right. And this applies definitely to the left and right, okay? So sometimes, like I remember being in a debate once and I made a comment about Melania being an immigrant. I mean, those folks nearly attacked me on the spot, right? Okay, yes, but you can't say I get to say whatever I want about the deep state, the establishment, the Democrats, the liberals, and this and that and the other thing. But if you say anything about my beloved Trump, then I'm deeply offended. Mm-hmm. No, stop being offended. And I mean, especially on the right, like the whole thing is, don't get offended. So don't get offended when I say something about Trump.
Right.
It's okay.
But now it's me. Now I get to be outraged.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's okay. I'm another American with a different opinion. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that. And of course, on the left, guys, my God, we are offended at everything. We're offended at everything. And it's so annoying. And so the fact that the left can't see that is amazing, because now to my friends on the left who think, oh, no, you're just validating the right wing, et cetera. Guys, there's objective reality. When 79% of the country tells you that they don't want transgender women playing in women's sports, okay, you can say that you don't agree with that position. Nothing wrong with that. There's 18% who say yes, right? But understand that you're in the 18% and you're not in the 79%. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean that one person is more right morally or not, but it does mean you're in the minority and your positions seem radical to others, right? And they can't get that through their head. They think, no, everybody thinks like us. It's only the fascists who say keep Messi out of women's soccer or LeBron out of women's basketball. No, it's not just the fascists. It's 80% of the country. So please, and when you go to burst these bubbles, the people inside the bubbles hate you.
Yeah.
So that's the situation I'm in.
Well, look, I think that outrage is very uncharismatic, and you've had a couple generations of Americans who have been shown through media that, whoever is the most outraged is the most virtuous, whoever is the biggest victim is the ultimate hero. And that kind of messaging has created this sort of bizarre understanding of what charisma and what authenticity is. And it's just, that encounter, the bursting of that bubble, waking up to that reality where it's like, actually, no, you are not the main character just because you're crying into TikTok.
Yeah. So look, I've got folks who are, independents. I've got folks who are hardcore Democrats and hardcore progressives and populists, all in our TYT network. Okay, so we got the whole range from the middle to the far left, right? So I try to tell the folks on the far left, you've got to be able to modulate, right? So when a guy like Beatty is nominated for the post that he has, and he has these outrageous things that he says, then today there's a story about a guy on Doge who said normalize Indian hate. And then you read and he hates the Jews, the Muslims, he hates everybody that isn't Christian and white. Now, the left thinks that's everyone on the right. No. There's 77 million people who voted for Trump. They're not all those guys. But for the right, when those guys pop up, can you not see why people would be concerned? So the guy who says normalize Indian hate, you think if you're Indian and an American citizen who's South Asian, right, that's not going to bother you? Of course that's going to bother you. Of course that's going to bother you, right? But I just constantly, we do this on the Young Turks all the time, shoe on the other foot, okay? If it's a story about Trump and the media is reacting a certain way, I say, now, how would you feel if that story was about Bernie Sanders, right? Or if the story's about Bernie Sanders, I ask the right wing, how would you feel if that was about Trump? Right? So just keep doing shoe on the other foot, because it helps you to realize, oh, right, that's the other. They're looking at it that way. Not everybody's looking at it the same way I am.
Well, and this is kind of like, part of the consequence of living in an extremely internet-mediated political landscape. Like, people say things on the internet, and if you have free speech on the internet and you use it, it might be on a major platform, it might be buried somewhere in green text somewhere, it might be on a comment on a blog from 15 years ago, and then it's going to get surfaced, and whatever is the sort of the most damaging thing that you've ever said on the internet is going to be dug up by people whose basic, whether they're being paid or not, or they're unpaid contributors to just perpetuating that Oppo research machine. It's going to be surfaced. And half the time it's people, saying things when they were teenagers, or saying things that they didn't take seriously, or said things just to try to get a rise out of someone. Or were ultimately saying things that cut across whatever their identity seemed to be. It's like these guys. There's so many half Jewish guys who are accused of being fascists on the internet because they supported Donald Trump. I mean, there's no way to stop that outrage machine from twirling and twirling if every time someone says something on the internet, it's going to be resurfaced and held against them, right?
So two things about that. One, for our side, modulate. Because when a true bad guy comes, nobody believes us anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
You're just crying wolf.
Right. And for both sides, understand that when someone is disliked by the establishment, there will almost always be a character assassination of them. Okay, so in the old days, you guys call it the deep state, and that's fine for the purpose of this, especially because in the old days, I think the real deep state did exist. I mean, the one that did assassinations, et cetera, right? So in those days, they would do literal assassinations. And by the way, often of left-wing figures, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, JFK, Fred Hampton, etc. And if the FBI thought this guy's causing trouble and we don't like it, they'd put a bullet in his head and we were done with it. But there was a problem with that. It made martyrs of those people, and it made their causes more popular, not less popular. Okay? So eventually the establishment figured out, wait a minute, instead of doing physical assassinations, why don't we do character assassinations? Because then when you smear the author of the idea, it makes the idea less popular instead of more popular. And that way we get rid of the guy and we hurt the idea. So now you'll see whenever someone's outside the establishment, all of a sudden character assassinations start to pile up.
Well, this is RFK Jr. all over the place. Right?
So now RFK Jr. is a funny category. He's a category of himself. But you're right. So Bobby Kennedy is totally outside of the entire political spectrum. I knew him when he was on the left. I know him a tiny bit now, and so he's an environmental lawyer that challenges giant corporations. Now he's challenging giant pharmaceutical companies from the right, right? So, oh my God, everybody's blitzkrieging on character assassinations. Right. And normally, and so here's how you should judge whether a character assassination is true, like, damn it, he really did do that, right? And I don't like that. Or it's BS. What did they find? Because when they go to do a character assassination, they'll look at the haystack of your life and try to find the needles, right? So, for example, they did it to me. I've been canceled, I don't know, half a dozen times. I've lost track. And I've been canceled by the left, the right, and the middle.
Yeah,
so,
congrats.
So I've...
The triple crown.
I thank you. I appreciate it. Triple crown, hat trick, I got it all, right? So, originally, when the alt-right came to cancel me when I founded Justice Democrats, they looked and looked and looked for a problem. And it was in the Me Too era, right? So they dug so much that they literally called every woman that's ever worked at the Young Turks. And every one of them said, no, Cenk's a great boss. We're good. Thanks for asking. But like, no, this is a great place to work. They're like, damn it. He hasn't done anything wrong. He's super boring. He just looks at his computer all day long.
Got to keep digging.
Right. Got to keep digging. Yeah. So then they go to the Wayback Machine, which is where the internet keeps deleted stuff. I had deleted blogs from 15 years ago at that point, right? Because I looked out, I was a kid trying to get attention, little shock jock, that kind of thing, right? And it was mainly jokes about myself. So one line is, I write a column about how I can't I'll be a little crass here, okay? But
go for it.
Okay, I can't get laid in South Beach. And I'm like, oh my God, how incompetent do you have to be? And I'm making fun of myself the whole article. And near the end, I say, the real problem is the genes of women are problematic because they won't sleep with us as readily as we'd like, right? That's obviously joking about how you can't even get laid with all these models in South Beach, right? And it's about myself.
Right.
They take that and they go like, good. We dug so far, we found this rusty, old, tiny needle in the bottom of the haystack. He once wrote something that was a joke and can be misinterpreted. They put it out there. Then the left wing, like the Justice Democrat staff, et cetera, all the circling, that was catnip for them. Right. So they're they love it. They're like, you're a female, you're a sexist, misogynist. You gotta go.
We knew it.
We
knew it all
it.
along. Right.
And I'm like, guys, they're looking for a needle in a haystack. And then, by the way, then I run for Congress. And the New York Times, infinitely worse than any left-winger or any right-winger. They say, he has a well-known history of being sexist against women. But then they started making things up. They're like, he's a long history of being anti-Muslim. I'm like, I am Muslim. You didn't even write that, right? So my background's Muslim. I'm an atheist now, right? But my family is, my background is, my culture is, et cetera. And the New York Times pretended because of and you know what that needle was? And I'm going to get to the point for everybody in a sec. But but it's an interesting experience that I've lived. So that needle was, I once made a joke about, these both the fundamentalist Muslims and Orthodox Jews, they wear different outfits, right? And to be fair, so does the Pope, right? And so, and they like some of the Orthodox have like these giant Russian coats and the big hilarious hats and stuff, and the Muslims have their robes and they got their skull cap. And I'm like, do they think it's a fashion contest? That they're going to get up to the pearly gates and God's going to be like, you were really good, but you're dressed really nicely. Come on up, right? And so it's just a joke. It's, you may, if you're Orthodox or if you're, more fundamentalist Islam, you might be super offended by that.
But you've probably heard worse.
But you've probably heard way worse, right? So anyways, they're like, long history of being anti-Muslim and anti-Semitic.
Yeah. Shameless.
Off with one joke over a 20-year career? Are you kidding me?
Well,
right?
I knew we were in trouble. I don't think I hallucinated this. When the New York Times actually did a write-up on the New York Times shifting from hard news to what they called juicy narratives. And I was like, okay, it's over.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
So now when you look at Bobby, I'll give you a good example of one on the right, Madison Cawthorn. Okay? Madison Cawthorn, super right-winger. He's liked by MAGA. He's liked by a lot of folks, et cetera. He says two things against Republican senators.
Yeah, lights out.
Lights out. Oh, they do orgies, they do coke, whatever they do. I don't know if it's true or not true, but he said it, right? All of a sudden, they got pictures of him. Did you just find the pictures? No, you had the pictures all along, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so now what is it? Oh, a character assassination based on some pictures he took God knows how many years ago.
Right.
Now, I don't agree with the brother on policy, but I can see a character assassination when especially one that clear, right? And sometimes people did do it, but they're trying to take them out. Like Matt Gaetz is a good example. I don't know exactly what he did, but it doesn't look good. But having said that, why did they come after Matt Gaetz and now someone else? He's doing anti-corruption bills. He's doing, hey, don't let them trade stocks. He stopped taking corporate PAC money. All of a sudden, we got a problem with Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, surprise, surprise.
Right. Now, Bobby's in a category of his own because when you go to look for a needle in a haystack with Bobby, that haystack is filled with needles. Okay? I mean, half the haystack's a needle. So
yeah, he's lived a few lives.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah. Nevertheless, why are they coming after him? Because he's scrambling the categories. He's opening up possibilities for people to make decisions and choices that they wouldn't even be able to imagine if they were trapped inside that bubble.
Yeah. And also to your point about Gates and all that, and even Kennedy. Look, last one. Eliot Spitzer was a Democrat, governor of New York, attorney general of New York, and he was known as the sheriff of Wall Street. He comes from a very establishment family, an establishment background. The establishment is very comfortable with him, or was. Then he started to go after the bankers because the bankers were robbing us.
Right.
And Elliot started pointing that out. And that's when he became known as the sheriff of Wall Street. And he's putting guys away for ripping people off. Ooh, they did not like that. And in this case, they're so brazen that they admitted on camera. There's a movie about it called Client Number 9 on, I think it's still on Netflix. And so the donor class goes, yeah, I didn't like that he was investigating us. So I hired a private investigator to track him until we found anything that he could do that he did wrong.
Right.
And boom, there, we found him with an escort. That's it. And then the whole country falls for it, hook, line, and sinker. And they go, well, but he was with an escort. It's true, right? So then women hate him because they imagine.
The narrative begins.
Yeah, and Roger Stone in that case made up the thing about how he wore black socks. He kept his black socks on, and that creates a visual. Then people hate him more. Meanwhile, they forgot, why are they attacking him? Not because of the escort. They all have escorts themselves. Give me money, I'll hire a private investigator. Every guy on Wall Street that's robbing us has 12 escorts, okay? But they pretend that that's the problem. But the real problem was he was regulating the bad guys.
Some would say this is politics. And if you can't stand the heat, then get out of the kitchen,
Yeah, so Trump wins, as you heard earlier, totally against Trump, not going to vote for him. And I come at it from a very patriotic point of view. And you could say, hey, I disagree with how you're interpreting the facts, but he said terminate the Constitution after he lost, and I was done with him. Okay? So I love America, I love the Constitution, etc. But that's a lead up to now that he won, I had a different feeling than I expected. I was surprised by it. And I tweeted something, and then everybody got excited and angry and all this stuff. And I said, I feel strangely optimistic.
When did that happen?
It happened about a week or 2 weeks after he won. So not after he became president, but after he won. And so I think, now here's a guy that I definitely didn't want to win. Why am I feeling this way? Right? And I realized why. It's because, so look, I battle with MAGA. I'll battle with the right wing. I'll battle with anybody, right? But my real enemy is the establishment. And why? Because the establishment's in power, right? So like the average Trump voter is not in power. The average left-wing voter is not in power. And what the powerful want us to do is fight each other and hate each other. And if we're so focused on fighting and hating one another, we'll forget that the real problem's up top, up top. It's the Eliot Spitzer issue, right? So they get you to fight, they get you to hate him, but you forget, oh, he was fighting the guys up top, okay? The donor class, et cetera, right? So I wanted Bernie Sanders and the populist left to defeat the establishment. As it turned out, Trump defeated them. And now there's a little bit more freedom. Now, why is there more freedom? On the one hand, Trump's terrible against the press, suing everybody who he thinks insulted him or whatever. Brother, you won. Let it go. Let it go.
Well, this is about libel law, right? This is about Sullivan versus the New York Times. Hey, this is a lawsuit against the New York Times. Come on, you want to beat up on the Times, right?
No, but James, look at how much the New York Times smeared me.
Yeah.
And I gave you the tip of the iceberg of that story. That story gets more and more absurd. But part of the reason I didn't sue them is because we need an aggressive free press that challenges politicians, that challenges the media, etc. And if the president, the most powerful person in the country, is suing the media, it intimidates them and gets compliance, and I hate it. We don't need more compliance, we need more freedom, even if it means criticizing the beloved Trump, okay?
Yeah, I hear that, but libel is libel, right? And I just think that case,
but they didn't
swung way too far.
They didn't come within a million miles of libeling him. They libeled me, and I still didn't sue. They didn't come anywhere near that with Trump. I mean, the whole thing, the 60 Minutes thing that just came out, the answer was exactly what we expected. They didn't hide anything. So I know you guys disagree. I know. That's fine. That's the disagreement. But my point is, even though I think Trump goes too far, and I think that that's going against freedom and freedom of the press, freedom of speech, etc. The number one problem in this country, and we got to prioritize this, the number one problem was the establishment media that was a monopoly. Mm-hmm. And you were not allowed to go outside the guardrails. Yeah. Okay? So I was a host on MSNBC, and the minute I went outside the guardrails, right. warning. So I remember I asked this one writer, I said, can you name me 3 honest Democrats? Now, remember, this is back in 2011, okay? So some people think, oh, Django, because Trump won, you're going and talking to the right wing, and now you start to criticize the left. I'm like, yeah, you don't know my career at all. Yeah. I've been criticizing the Democrats, the left, in every way, right? So I asked the guy, name me 3 honest Democrats who don't care about donor money. And he named Henry Waxman. I was like, it's good enough. I'll give it to you. He named someone else. I was like, okay, fine. And maybe it was Bernie. And I was like, yeah, that one's real, right? And then he ran out of names. He's like, Chuck Schumer. And I was like, Chuck Schumer.
Well, that's your number 3.
Right. No, not honest. Totally works for the donors. I get a talking to afterwards. Hey, Cenk, remember who the home team is? Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm like, yeah, I know. The home team's the audience. They're like,
right. No.
Not exactly.
Right.
Not exactly. Obama does an absurd press conference where he says, love the Egyptian revolution, love Hosni Mubarak, our great ally. Like, you can't love both. The revolution is against Hosni Mubarak. Yeah. Cenk, don't criticize the president. Why? We're in the news business. You can't criticize him right after a press conference. That's disrespectful. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that we criticized Bush right after press conferences and Cheney right after press conferences. Why are we all of a sudden have a different stand for Obama? And I said, look, if you say I can't criticize him right after the press conference out of BS respect, when can I criticize him? An hour later? A day later? A week later? Yeah. Let me guess. Whenever it's out of the news cycle, and then you'll tell me, oh, Cenk, what are you going back to that old story for?
Yeah, you're beginning to understand.
Yeah. So that monopoly of thought was poison to the country. Yeah. And not being able to go outside of the corporate guardrails, the status quo, so that's why I felt optimistic, because the number one enemy, Darth Vader, establishment media, establishment politicians, had been defeated. Maybe, in my opinion, the wrong side defeated them, but at least they were defeated. Yeah, and now we're in an open playing field.
It's a real defeat. You know, those dynasties, the Bushes, the Clintons, the Bidens, that's 3 for 3. And that's a powerful, you call it a sea change. That's what it is.
Yeah. And so that's where I said, I'd rather be in the populist woods and then in an establishment prison.
Well, right? But let's talk about this for a second, though, because like populism sort of got a bad name because of the propaganda war and Trump and everything. But now it's like there's an opportunity to actually think about what this means and what a populist agenda would actually look like. So, you talked about the Bernie left and sort of populist coming from the left. People still, I guess, remember Occupy Wall Street as sort of an attempt at a populist moment. What does populism look like to you in 2025?
Yeah. So first, let me clarify that I think there are 3 branches of both wings, right? Both the right and the left. So there's the establishment guys, the establishment Republicans like Mitch McConnell, establishment Democrats like Joe Biden. So those guys are the uniparty. Until Trump and Bernie came around, they were fully in charge, 100% in charge. There was, other than Bernie in the woods, there was no one fighting them. They had a monopoly on everything, and that was the bad old days. So a lot of Democrats make the mistake of thinking, oh, we got to go back to those days. No, we don't. I hated those days. Can't stand those days. So that's the establishment wing, okay? But they're in charge, or they were in charge, and they still are. I mean, 90% of Congress is still uniparty, right? And so that's just something both sides have to contend with. But they have almost no real support among the population. So there's no one raises their hand and says, I'm an establishment Republican or I'm an establishment Democrat, because they know that just means you're sucking up to the powerful, right? And et cetera. So I'll get to what it means in a sec. But okay, so that's one wing. And then second wing is on the other side of the spectrum, radical left, radical right. Okay, so the right doesn't want to admit that it has a radical portion. It definitely does. And it's a super scary thing where it scares minorities and LGBTQ folks. We got to get rid of this and we got to get rid of that, et cetera. And by the way, it smears everyone else on the right, because then the left says they're all radical right. But that's not true. That's only a portion of the right wing. But now, before you get offended when you're in the right wing, let me tell you, same thing is true of the left wing. There's a radical left. And so they're the ones who have they say crime didn't actually go up. It was a right-wing narrative. And I'm like, guys, there's crime everywhere. Right. You cannot go to San Francisco or Oakland and not have your car broken into. People started leaving their car doors open because they're like, well, at least I'll save the money on the broken glass. Right?
Yeah, but if you're on the internet all day and you never go outside, then you'll believe whatever you're fed.
Yeah, and so the radical left to this day, they hate me because they think, there he goes again, pretending that there was crime and feeding into the right-wing narrative. Meanwhile, Oakland recalled their mayor because they thought she was too soft on crime. 65-35.
Yeah,
that's the most left-wing city in the country going, there is crime, and we're sick of it, and you knucklehead rich white liberals, the crime is against black people and brown people, and we don't want it. We don't want it. So the radical left will be furious with what I just said, right? And any criticism of them at all, and the radical right will be furious, okay? And by the way, other people that think, no, you're describing the whole left or the whole right. I'm not. Listen to what I am saying. Now, finally, we get to what I view as the good wings of both parties, which is populist left and populist right. So I think that Trump is not an actual populist. We can get into that debate and discussion, but at least he gets that that's what people want. And I think his voters, that is the largest block of his voters, populist right, okay? Right. And for us, the largest block of voters is populist left, and we have super popular policies that actually a lot of the right wing agrees with, like paid family leave is a great example. Moms get 12 weeks off after they have a baby. It's very pro-family. That's why 74% of Republicans are in favor of it. Overall in the country, 84% of Americans are in favor of it. So then I ask my friends on the left, why don't our politicians ever do things that are popular?
What do they say?
And things that are on our side, right? Like, for example, Trump comes in, it's a tornado of action. I disagree with, 80% of it at least, but at least the brother's doing something, and he's trying to make his base happy. And you see media going, trying to make his base happy, right? I'm like, no, that's what politics is. Yeah, right. You're supposed to make your voters happy. You're supposed to represent your voters.
Everyone knows that things are broken.
Yes. So no, on the left, why don't they ever do the things that would be happy? First of all, they love there's nothing we can do. As soon as you elect a Democrat, they'll tell you, there's nothing I could do. Then why did I elect you? Okay.
Because the rhetoric was so beautiful.
Yeah. So you're telling me, brother, that you cannot get a bill passed when 84% of the country is in favor of it? You're telling on yourself. What you're saying is either I am the world's worst politician, so do not make me the candidate. I don't even know how to get a bill passed when almost everyone in the country agrees. I am so deeply incompetent that I can't get the most popular bill in the country passed. Okay, then great. Then you shouldn't be the candidate. Obvious, clear, right? But that's not the real.
This is the classic message from the establishment right, too, for decades, for generations.
Yeah.
Oh, we're just the party of no, and, the best that we can do is just kind of shoot down things that are bad, and we can't have a positive agenda, and it's just maybe next year, maybe next cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Never comes.
Why? Because the donors love the status quo. They don't want you to do anything. There's one true thing that Joe Biden said. He told his donors back in 2020, don't worry, nothing will fundamentally change. Mm-hmm. And that was exactly right. And so he gets into office, and all of a sudden, 85% of his campaign problems is out the window. Nothing we could do. First thing he said in the Super Bowl interview was, $15 minimum wage. That was supposed to be the bare minimum. That was supposed to be super easy, right? $15 minimum wage. Oh, yeah, there's probably not enough support for that. When the president says that, that means I don't want it. I want you to throw it under the bus. I want you to get rid of it. Not enough support, right? Mm-hmm. Again, paid family leave. $15 minimum wage at that time was polling at 67%. 2/3 of the country want it, and you don't think there's enough support? No, that means my donors don't want it. The National Restaurant Association doesn't want it. And guess who took checks from the National Restaurant Association right after they voted against it? Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. Mm-hmm. Okay? So it is an outright auction. So why don't the Democrats object more to Obama not doing 95% of his agenda and Biden not doing 85% of his agenda? But Biden was a little bit better, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the bigotry, the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yes. The one phrase to survive the Bush years. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And so they've been taught by Morning Joe and Whoopi Goldberg, how dare you expect anything? No. These are super wise men, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they're playing four-dimensional chess, and you're a moron. You don't know anything, okay? Know your role. Mm-hmm. No, you don't get that, and you don't get that. And if you want anything, you have to push him. Remember, guys, when I get in office, push me. Why? My job is to vote for you. Your job is to push yourself. Mm-hmm. What do you need me to push you for? And then when I do go to push him, which you know me, I do, they're like, how dare you push us? Well, brother, why don't you do something, right?
Well, and this is how it is that, people have started talking about horseshoe theory, where it's like you go far off on the right and far off on the left, and it starts curving around toward the same policies, because they don't think of the populists as being in the center. They think of the establishment as occupying the center, and in order to fight the establishment, you got to go all the way to the fringes.
So that's a great point, terrific point, and I want people to think about that, because the mainstream media has been telling you lies your whole life. And it's not in the facts. They actually don't play around with the actual numbers, the statistics, the studies. That's not where the lies are. And Noam Chomsky's talked about this for decades, right? It's the framing. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a great example of it that goes exactly to what you're saying. So Joe Manchin in my opinion, is an extremely radical pro-corporate politician. Almost all of the things that he says, except gun control, has a popular position on gun control, and they always do it on social issues, so it's big, shiny object. But all of his economic positions poll in the 30s or lower. So he's against paid family leave. He's in the 16%. Mm-hmm. He's not in the 84%. But mainstream media doesn't say he's a radical. What do they call him? A moderate.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, why is he a moderate? By the way, also true of Mitt Romney on the other side. Uh-huh. Now, Mitt Romney is a moderate on social issues. He is a moderate in his tone, et cetera, right? But when you look at his actual policy positions on economic issues, they're radical corporate positions that only 10% of the country, 25% of the country agrees with. Totally radical. But they're called beloved moderates. Why? Mitt Romney was the governor of Massachusetts. Yeah. He's a Republican from a blue state. Joe Manchin, a Democrat from a red state. West Virginia must be a moderate. And you radicals, you're doing the horseshoe, and you're all the way out like, oh, you want to cut the Pentagon.
Yeah,
radical.
So
fringe. But wait a minute, like 80% of the country wants to cut the Pentagon. Mm-hmm. Okay, do you know, and this, you probably don't hear this a lot in right-wing media, 76% of the country wants to increase taxes on the rich.
Yeah.
Increase tax on the 3/4 of the country. But you never hear that anymore. Why? Because almost all of media is funded by the rich. So they're not going to tell you that poll. They're not going to emphasize that poll, right? So that's why I'm trying to get people to open their eyes. So that's why you're right. the populists are not meeting at the horseshoe. They've always been in the middle. The reason why the populist right and the populist left both want paid family leave is because it's an enormously moderate position. Every country, almost every country in the world, every developed country, but nearly everyone has paid family leave. We give Israel, we've now given them $300 billion over our lifetime. Last year, we gave them over $20 billion. They have paid family leave.
Yeah.
They have universal health care. They have Iron Dome. We have none of those things, right? But yet we keep giving them money. I think that's a radical position to give them money, right?
Think that's about to change?
I think it might. So that's a bold prediction that I have that I'll get to in a sec.
Yeah.
So, but they'll tell you, wait a minute, most of the countries in the middle, and goes, wait, why am I funding that? I want paid family leave. Why do they have it? And I'm sending them money and I don't have it. That's a moderate populist position. Populist right, populist left agrees. But mainstream media calls you radical.
Yeah.
Mainstream media tells you the most unpopular people are the moderates. That's the magic trick. So we're popping that bubble together. See, that's populist right, populist left together against the establishment that's been holding us down the entire time. Okay. And to my friends on the left, that doesn't mean I'm working with the radical right. It means I'm working with the populist right. And I need them to one more thing about my friends on the left. They think that take the most radical guy you'll ever find on the right, and they think he represents all 77 million Trump voters.
Yeah.
No,
that would make it so easy.
Yeah, because that makes it easy. It makes it easy to hate them.
Easy to message, easy to memorize those talking points.
And easy to label, easy to do everything, right? But the reality is that is a giant range. And within that 77 million people, there are a lot of great Americans who just want relief from the powerful, relief in their lives. Why are we the richest nation on earth? We can't give moms 12 weeks off. Estonia gives them 82 weeks off. Estonia.
Right.
Of course we can afford it, but we live under corporate rule, and the corporations don't want us to have anything. They want us to be indentured servants for them. So back to your question of, okay, what does populism mean? It means, number one thing, and we have a whole populist plank on our website, tyt.com. We talk about it on the show every day on the Young Turks, Monday through Friday, 6 o'clock on YouTube, and everywhere else, but that's a great place to watch it. So 6 things. One is anti-corruption, money out of politics. Okay, obviously the money's controlling the politicians. Anyone who tells you otherwise is disingenuous or knows nothing about politics. Number 2, anti-war. Okay, enough with the wars. They're not about defense. What are we defending ourselves against the Palestinians? The Palestinians can barely fight the Israelis. In fact, they can't fight the Israelis.
Yeah.
What are they? No, we're just making enemies out of people for no reason by having the neocons drive us into war after war after war, right? So that's 2. Number 3 is private equity is buying all of our residential homes, real estate. And when they buy our homes, that's where we create wealth for the middle class. The bankers are now taking that. They're extracting the wealth from the American middle class. They're going to kill off the middle class. We have to end that right now. And populist right agrees, populist left agrees. The establishment hates that idea because they're like, the beloved bankers. Of course they have a right to buy your home and price you out of the market and then drive up prices and make you a renter. And that way they get the wealth and you owe them for the rest of your life? No, okay? Negotiate all drug prices. Why? What kind of free market where you can't negotiate your own drug prices? And Bush did it. Then Obama said he was going to turn around. He didn't. Right. Obama continued it. And then Trump said he was going to stop it, and he didn't. He continued it. Then Biden said he was going to stop it. He didn't. He continued it. He did it for 10 drugs out of 10,000. Thank you so much. It's a trick. Now Trump's back, and he's not doing it, and he won't do it unless we push him to do it. But these are populist positions, okay? So, of course we want to negotiate drug prices. That's the free market. And then, but as you see all of those there, they're not supposed to be, and some on the left say, hey, Cenk, these aren't the top priorities for the left necessarily. Climate change isn't on there. The X and Y and Z aren't on there. Higher wages is on there because, again, that's for the average American. Lift up minimum wage, you lift up all wages, and they'll say, oh, that creates inflation. No, brother, your corporate greed creates inflation, and supply chain issues create inflation, and the Federal Reserve creates inflation. The average guy in America isn't creating inflation because his wages went up by $1. No. You're using it as an excuse, okay? Higher wages. So you get it. It's not supposed to be the most left-wing positions or the most right-wing positions. It's supposed to be the positions we all agree on. So that's populism for the average guy, not for the elites.
So I'm really interested in how tech changes the game on all this stuff, because there's no question that technology is in some ways creating a new elite that wants to occupy some of the high ground that is being slowly surrendered by the old elite, by the establishment. But it also does offer populism a kind of new lease on life. I don't think you would have seen populism make the gains that you've seen just over the past year or so without the technological development that we have seen. But it cuts both ways, for every person who sort of feels like they can get more of a grip on their own life through leveraging technology. There's a Bill Gates out there with an opposite agenda of increased centralization, increased consolidation, increased control. So we've got a few minutes left here. I'm curious to hear which way you think the tech influence is going to tip when it comes to kind of populism versus the establishment.
So both. And there's already forces from both camps all over social media, Silicon Valley, et cetera. And then who's going to win? Well, it depends on the time frame, right? So I love social media and online media, not just because, we live there. And look, we're the longest running show in internet history, Young Turks is, and we were the first partner for YouTube. So we're the original YouTubers.
Right.
So obviously I have a bias. I believe in online media, and I believed in it for now a quarter of a century from the very beginning, right? But why did I believe in it? Because that's where you have freedom. And that's where there are less gatekeepers. So in the beginning, there were no gatekeepers. So if I'm trying to get on radio or TV, wall-to-wall gatekeepers, they're all establishment. And if you don't think just like them, they're not going to hire you. And if they make the mistake of hiring you, later they're going to fire you, okay? So you can't, that's a prison to me. Online media, we're in the woods, right? So, but some people are scared of the woods, a little too much freedom, right?
It's dark in the woods.
Yeah, and they go, oh, wait, that guy's saying something I don't like, let's shut it down, right? And that guy's saying something that could be dangerous, let's shut it down, right? I get it, and some of them were dangerous. We had to stop shutting things down. It's not going to work if you shut things down, because who's making the decision on what to shut down? Okay, you got somebody saying something dangerous? Counter it. Oh, but that lie is going to go around the world. Yeah, it is. That's life, man.
Yeah, always has been.
Yeah, and you don't have a choice. You just have to get better at countering it. Because if you try to tamp it down or cancel it, it's just going to make it worse. It's just going to explode in other ways.
And those are censors just hiding out in places of power that you don't know their names. You can't vote them in, can't vote them out. That's not America.
Yeah. So now, at the same time, the tech guys are now enormously wealthy. So now they've got a reason to want the status quo. Why does mainstream media, the establishment, et cetera, why do they say nothing should fundamentally change? Why are they in favor of the status quo? Because they're already at the top. If you're already at the top, you don't want anything to change, right? Change can only bring you lower. So you're like, no change, no change. So now that the Silicon Valley tech bros, et cetera, are at the top, all of a sudden, they got an incentive for the status quo, right? And all of a sudden, they have an incentive to keep things kind of the way they are. And now they're worried about people criticizing them. So now they're looking at their own algorithms. They're looking at their own rules, right? And they're saying, okay, wait, should I start becoming more like mainstream media where I turn everything to my advantage?
The temptation is always there.
That's right.
The nature of power.
And so now you look at crypto. Now I'm going to really get people mad, okay? So... guys, crypto is so unregulated, such wild west. And so it might work out for you. You might go in, you might buy low, you might sell higher, and you're out. Great, good job. I'm happy for you, okay? But what's a regulation? A regulation is a law, okay? That's just a different word for a law, okay? Now, are you pro laws or against laws? Well, I don't know. What are we regulating, right?
Right.
So... Should we have too much, or a lot of regulation or a little regulation? I don't know. What are we regulating? And what's the goal, right? So should there be no regulation of crypto? You're nuts. The minute you have no regulation of anything, there'll be robbery after robbery after. You're taking the cops off the street. You're defunding the police, right? So on the other hand, if you have smothering regulation, you can't get anything done. It becomes a giant bureaucracy. In California, believe me, we know over-regulation, right?
Right.
And so the answer is in the middle. And it's tough because it's not easy to label it, right? It's easy to say no regulation. Regulation is bureaucracy. It's easy to say, of course you need regulation. It protects the consumers, it protects the workers, et cetera.
Well, and with some people are out there saying like this is basically gambling, and that's good, and that's what the use case is. And if you have unregulated gambling, you can. I mean, we've tried that. We know how that story ends. Then you've got other people, me, some others, saying no. Bitcoin, you got to be using it. If you're just treating it like a trip to the casino, then you're using it the wrong way, and you're not going to build wealth, and it's not going to be something that does empower ordinary people.
I'm mainly worried about the robbery. Okay. So there's two potential robberies. I'm not saying it's happened. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. I'm just saying be careful. So one is the folks at the top of crypto have an enormous amount of power. They get to sway things way more than the average guy does. If it's a pyramid scheme, I'm not saying Bitcoin, and I don't know enough about it, but a meme coin.
Yeah, you can totally rug anyone you want.
Exactly.
And this is already happening. You got what's her name with the podcast? Just she wakes up one morning and pulls out her funds, and everyone gets ruined, and it's it's bad.
Yeah. So I've been warning about that the whole time, and a lot of people are yelling at me, "Oh, you don't know. I'm like, guys, I'm trying to protect you, but if you don't want it, I got you. Right. But be careful, buyer beware, right? Especially on the meme coins. Okay, but there's a second potential robbery. Now, Elon Musk is in charge of the whole government, apparently. And then he brings in Silicon Valley CEOs on his Doge team. Now, wait. We got a bunch of CEOs that have complete access to the Treasury. If you're not worried about that, you're not paying attention, and you're getting too bubble brain.
Well, I mean, this is worth a whole separate conversation. I mean, as far as I know, they've got eyes on the numbers. They can't actually, stop payment and stuff.
That's what we think.
It's early days.
And then now we today in the news is a 19-year-old who that's part of that team that used to work for a place that hires black hat hackers. Black hat hackers can hack into almost anything. And now that guy has access to the information at the Treasury. Okay, so I'm just telling you, and crypto said they don't need the government. We don't need any stinking regulations. Now they're talking about, hey, why don't we insure this stuff with U.S. taxpayer money? No.
Right.
No.
Right.
No, you want to do crypto, you do crypto. Don't put it on all the U.S. taxpayers.
Well, that's a bank,
That's a bank. That's a bank. I don't know. So, because if they take the U.S. taxpayer money to do some sort of pyramid scheme, you haven't seen rage yet, okay? And the people who will be the angriest will be the right wing because they went into crypto more than the left wing did. If they get robbed, or the average couple or a retired couple in the middle of Indiana gets robbed, and because some tech bro wanted to make an extra billion, there's going to be rage like no one's seen before. Be careful.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can't get rid of the people, and that's something more guys need to bear in mind across politics.
Yeah. One more thing, because we mentioned and we didn't get back to it. On Israel, you asked. So what do we think is going to happen, right? So this is me. I love making predictions, and usually I'll say like I hope I'm wrong, right? I think I'm like Biden's definitely going to lose. I hope I'm wrong, right? Hillary's going to lose. I hope I'm wrong, right? And so, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you get it right, people get mad at you and they think you caused it, right? It's the Bruno problem, if you've seen Encanto, right? So now on Israel, I'm making maybe my boldest prediction.
Let's hear it.
I think that MAGA is going to turn on Israel, and they're in the middle of turning on Israel now. And I'll define what turning on Israel means. And they're going to put pressure on Trump, who is going to want to serve Israel, and it's going to create a giant clash between the donor class and MAGA. And I think MAGA is going to win. And so so Netanyahu and the AIPAC and the Adelsons that have funded, by the way, all politicians, gave Joe Biden over $11 million, gave Kamala Harris over $5 million during this campaign alone, the Israel lobby, et cetera. These are facts. You can catch feelings, but they're facts. And then $337 million to Trump over 3 election cycles, just one family, Sheldon and Miriam Adelson. I can get into all the corruption I do in my book, Justice is Coming, both on the Democratic and Republican sides. Okay, so that is a world of power. Netanyahu, standing ovation after standing ovation, because the whole Congress is bought, right? Or almost all Congress. This is another reason why I love Bernie, okay? And it isn't about religion. It's about foreign governments, okay? Bernie's Jewish, and he's like, I don't like it. I don't like it. Right. They're taking the money, and they're killing people with it. No, why are they taking our money? There you go. I love Bernie, right? So, and a lot of right-wingers are saying that now. So the idea that Israel could lose a political battle in America is unimaginable. They've never lost one my entire life. They get everything they want. Every check is a blank check. Infinite power in America because of money and politics. They just did something smart. And the drug companies do it even more. The oil companies do it. The bankers do it. Everybody does it, which is pay the politicians and they'll work for you. They're just servants, right? So that's what AIPAC did, et cetera. But I think that they poked the bear. So already I thought this, and then what just happened with Netanyahu and how he's having Trump pull the chair in for him like he's his freaking waiter.
Right.
And this whole nonsense about we're going to own Gaza, what is going to be the 51st state? We're going to take care of the unexploded bombs?
Yeah, I don't know. Netanyahu looked a little weirded out by that. So I'm not 100% sure, but I think you might be right that Israel might lose a political battle in the U.S.
And so the left, look, I've been trying my whole life, and we're going to win one of these days. But people in power mainly ignore the left, to be honest. And I hate it, but I'm being as objective as I can be. But when the right gets mad, that moves people, right? And so when MAGA gets mad at the Israeli lobby, guys, never make it about religion. Never, ever, 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 okay? Jewish folks are brothers and sisters. They're Americans, etc. It's not about that. But this foreign government has taken enough from us. Enough, enough, enough. And when MAGA says enough, Trump likes being popular. He cares about his base. So he might act, but you're going to have to do a lot to push him past those donors.
Yeah,
because he's taken hundreds of millions of dollars, and he loves money. So you got to push really hard to win against the Israeli lobby. That would be epic. And I think MAGA might be able to do it.
Might be like a Nixon has to go to China kind of thing. That's all the time we got, Cenk. Thank you so much for joining us. And, may the spicy predictions continue to flow.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Monday through Friday, 6 o'clock. Everybody check out Young Turks on YouTube. Good
deal. Thank you for watching this particular YouTube show. If you are on YouTube right now, give us that like, hit the subscribe button, subscribe to Blaze TV. And until next time around, I'm James Poulos. This is 0 Hour, and may God have mercy on us all.